I'm able to walk a little bit in the neighborhood. I can walk around my hospital, but I still don't know what that means. It was on Mother's Day in 2008 that, I decide to ride my bike. We have a family powwow, and so I get on my bike, and I'm able to bike around the block. My kids are crying. My wife is crying. I'm crying. If you could see me up close, I'm crying now. Because that was the moment where I realized the conventional understanding of multiple sclerosis, progressive MS, is incomplete, that we don't understand how much recovery is possible.
So welcome to the first ever Wellness Wednesday. Wellness Wednesdays, I'm going to bring you some of the highlights from the Fatigue Super Conference, which was an online conference we ran earlier this year, where we had 40 of the world's leading experts talking about fatigue. We're also going to bring you excerpts and highlights from some of the many other interviews and sessions we've done as part of the Optimum Health Clinic over the years. There's also going to be some new interviews, hopefully some sessions with some of the practitioner team here at the Optimum Health Clinic. But for the first Wellness Wednesday, I'm going to bring you an excerpt from one of my favorite interviews that we did at the Fatigue Super Conference. This was with Dr. Terry Wahls, who is a clinical professor of medicine at the University of Iowa. She's the best-selling author of the Wahls Protocol, How I Beat Progressive MS Using Paleo Principles and Functional Medicine. And Dr. Wahls has an amazing story, personal story, of going from being wheelchair-bound and severely incapacitated with multiple sclerosis to being in pretty much full remission. And that's what you're going to hear about in today's session. This is the first 10 minutes or so of her interview at the Fatigue Super Conference, where she shares her story. She's an amazing woman, amazing practitioner, and I'm excited for you to see this. I would love to start with a bit about your story, because you were working as a doctor in a traditional way with the usual kind of stresses and challenges that come with that. But in time, it became clear that something much more significant was going on with your own health. Tell us how that unfolded.
So, I'm a professor of medicine here. I just taken a new job at the University of Iowa, where I was teaching residents and helping manage primary care clinics for the VA. Now, during that time, I began to have problems stumbling and would ultimately get evaluated by a neurologist and MRIs of my brain, spinal cord, spinal tap, slew of blood tests, nerve conduction velocities. And my physicians noted that 13 years earlier, I'd had a problem with vision in my left eye. I now had weakness in my left leg and had abnormal spinal fluid and several lesions in my spinal cord. So I probably had optic neuritis 13 years earlier. They said I had relapsing remitting MS, relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. And so I, academic professor of medicine, I knew I wanted the best treatment from the best people. So I did my research. The Cleveland Clinic was doing clinical research in the Midwest. They were really the premier multiple sclerosis center. So I went there, figured out who their best physician was, saw her, started on the newest drugs. And over the next 3 years, I had one episode of weakness involving my right hand. And so had I been in a drug trial, that would have been counted as a huge success. But the problem was I was getting steadily weaker. I was beginning to have more trouble with fatigue. Now, my Cleveland Clinic physicians told me about the work of Loren Cordain. I read his papers, his books, read about lectins, and embraced the no grain, no legumes, no dairy, and made a huge change in my diet because I'd been a vegetarian for 20 years. So I reintroduced meat, but I continued to decline. The next year, I needed a recline wheelchair. I was advised that my disease was now secondary progressive MS. No spontaneous recoveries would be anticipated. Functions once lost would be anticipated to be gone forever. And so I took mitoxantrone, a form of chemotherapy. I continued to decline. I took Tysabri when it was first available. I very excited. I was thrilled to get to take it, but I continued to decline. and then I switched to CellCept. And that's when I'm like, I have to do everything that I possibly can. I go back to reading the basic science, and I begin experimenting, and I decide that mitochondria are the big driver of disability for MS. And so I devise, again, using animal studies, a supplement cocktail to support my mitochondria. And I figure out that that helps my fatigue a little bit because I do better when I'm on my supplements, worse when I'm off. It may be slowing down the speed of my decline, but I'm still declining. I'm thrilled now that I'm learning stuff that my neurologist and my primary care doc don't know to tell me about. So I'm really fired up about reading. I am on the Institutional Review Board reviewing research for safety for the university. And I say, give me everything related to the brain and human studies. So I got more and more comfortable reading studies and beginning to experiment on myself. My supplement list was growing. By the summer of '07, my disease had progressed enough. The university and the VA had redesigned my job, so I was supervising residents and working on the Institutional Review Board. I had a zero gravity chair in my office so I could recline back, my knees higher than my nose, had another one at home. I could walk very short distances, about 10 feet, using 2 walking sticks. I have trigeminal neuralgia that was getting more severe, more frequent visits to the pain clinic, higher and higher doses of gabapentin, and I was beginning to have brain fog. That summer, I think it was June, maybe early July, my chief of staff pulls me in and says he's assigning me to the traumatic brain injury clinic come January, and there won't be any residents. I'll be seeing patients as part of a multidisciplinary team. And he described a job that physically I did not think I would be able to do. So that was upsetting, but I tell my wife that, at that point, either I can do the job or I'll have to take medical disability, at least apply for it if I can't. But God works in mysterious ways because just a couple weeks later, a research protocol that I'm reviewing talks about electrical stimulation of muscles for people with traumatic spinal cord injury. So I convinced my physical therapist to let me try that. Fortunately, he used that as part of his athletic rehabilitation program. So I did that in clinic intensively for a couple of weeks. Then it got me a homegoing device. And I'm so weak, I can do like 5 minutes twice a day. That's where I'm starting from. And then at the same time, I discovered the Institute for Functional Medicine. They have a course on neuroprotection, which I take. I work my way through that. I have a longer list of supplements. That's a deeper understanding of what I could be doing. And not a lot's happening yet. But then I had this really big aha moment, like what if I redesign my paleo diet to maximize the intake of these nutrients in the food? So that's more research. I get that worked out. And December 26th, I start eating this new way. And then January, I go off to clinic. In the first week, I'm just watching. So I should be able to do that, just watch. The second week, I have to start examining these patients. At the end of the week, I'm like, that was not too bad. And then the next week, I'm going to think, my mental clarity is a little bit better. And my energy seems better. And my pain is less. And so I'm going to think, like, maybe I can do this job. Now, at the traumatic brain injury clinic, my partners were telling these guys and ladies, well, you had a terrible concussion. You're going to recover or not. We'll give you psych meds to deal with your rage and pain meds to deal with your pain. And you'll just either recover or not. Right. And so, I'm doing the primary care for these folks, and I'm getting stronger. And then within 3 months, I'm beginning to walk using a cane. And people are stunned to see me walking around the VA. And then in 6 months, I'm walking without a cane. And I am beginning to talk to my traumatic brain injury vets like, no, there's a lot you can do. We can talk about your food, your meditation, your exercise. So I'm here to change my practice. I'm talking a little bit more about diet and lifestyle. But I want to remind everyone that when you have a progressive condition for which there's no cure, part of the adaptation process is you accept life one day at a time. You don't know what anything means, what's going to happen. And so I've had remarkable recovery. I'm able to walk a little bit in the neighborhood. I can walk around my hospital, but I still don't know what that means. It was on Mother's Day in 2008 that, I decide to ride my bike. We have a family powwow, and so I get on my bike, and I'm able to bike around the block. My kids are crying. My wife is crying. I'm crying. If you could see me up close, I'm crying now. Because that was the moment where I realized the conventional understanding of multiple sclerosis, progressive MS, is incomplete, that we don't understand how much recovery is possible when we address diet and lifestyle factors. So that's at 9 months into this new way of eating. At 12 months, I'm able to do an 18.5-mile bicycle tour with my family. And so at that point, how I practice in my primary care and how I practice in the traumatic brain injury clinic has radically shifted. I am now focused on diet and lifestyle. I'm not very interested in changing drugs, so I'm very interested in teaching people why diet and lifestyle matter. And I'm having remarkable success. In the traumatic brain injury clinic, you could tell who I saw that their pain was better, their fatigue was better, their vision was better, their ability to get along with their family and the co-workers was markedly improved. And of course, this would ultimately change the focus of my research. Originally people thought I was sort of a nut job, a little too eccentric. But as time has gone on and my research has come forward, and I'd say the basic scientists and my scientific colleagues are paying attention to my research, I've gone from sort of banned to brilliant to visionary, and I have more and more opportunities to collaborate with other researchers here at the university.
So I hope you enjoyed that excerpt from Dr. Wahls' interview at the Fatigue Super Conference. If you want to access the full interview and the whole conference, you can still buy access to the online recordings at fatiguesuperconference.com. Tomorrow we have our first Thoughtful Thursday. And Thoughtful Thursdays, I'm going to bring you some ideas, thoughtful thoughts, to provide guidance and support for your own healing or transformational journey. And I wanted to start with something tomorrow which is pretty close to my heart, which is the idea that the more serious we are about our problems, the more serious they become. I am a great believer in humor and lightness, even in life's darkest, most difficult times. So that's what we're going to get into tomorrow.